All right, guys. I'm going to mute your microphone.
I'm going to mute your microphone.
Okay.
Why is this thing? I'm getting an echo. I don't know where it's coming
Getting
from.
an echo. I don't know where it's coming from.
Hello? Okay. So, guys, I'm going to start. If you have any question, what you can do is that you can go ahead and then raise your hand, and then I'll unmute your microphone so you can talk, okay? So, for the sake of those who could not join the previous lecture, that is why I'm starting afresh, so we can record and then give them the opportunity to have the introduction. So, you can send me an email if you want to send me an email via this email address, linusteach@gmail.com, or the school has an email address for us. My email ID is linus.aoajekum@kstu.edu.gh. So if you need to send me any email, you can use either of them, okay? All right. So we're going to begin. This course is basically Telecom 4. And when we talk about Telecom 4, it's basically grouped in several categories. I have sent you your course outlines already. And then in the course outline, you would realize that the courses have been categorized into 4. You have Introduction to Mobile Communication, and then you have GSM Services, and then you have Computer Networking Fundamentals, and then you have Satellite Communication. So it is my prayer that by the end of this month, by the end of next month, we should be able to finish all those chapters so that you can prepare for your exams. I don't know exactly when your exams is coming off, but I'm going to give you a lot of information which would prepare you for your exams and also for the job market, okay? All right, so let's jump straight to it. So if you can see my screen, you would realize that I have grouped the courses into lectures, or the topics into lectures. So we're going to be having, I think, about 14 or so lectures. So lecture 1 is going to be introduction to the course and then the lecture, which I'm trying to do now. And then we'll have evolution to mobile communication, which is going to be your lecture 1. And then lecture 2 and 3 is going to be a review of radio wave propagations in wireless environments. Here, what we're going to be doing is that I know you guys have studied a bit about transmission mediums and all that. Here, we'll be looking at free space path loss models. We'll look at the general path loss models. We'll look at most of the path loss models. We'll look at two-ray ground model. We'll also look at Okumura and Hatta models. We'll be looking at reflection and then diffraction, how they affect transmission or propagation of signals. We'll look at shadowing as well. Here we'll be looking at log-normal shadowing. And then we'll look at some outdoor and indoor propagation models like I mentioned, Okumura, Hatta, COS 231. There are several of them that we'll be looking at. And I said earlier that I was going to give you a project. Yes, the project is going to include some of these propagation models. You would decide what propagation model you feel you want to use, and then you use it to design a communication link, both uplink and downlink. And then with lecture 4 and 5, we'll be looking at cellular concepts. We'll be looking at how the cell looks like, how it's represented in most cases with a hexagon. We'll look at frequency reuse and then why we have to do frequency reuse. Basically, frequency reuse because of scarcity in spectrum. When the telecom companies buy spectrum from National Communication Authority, which is the NCA, they are given a set of frequencies. And if you want to continue using the same frequency for all your transmissions, you're going to have a lot of interference issues. So when you are building your cell sites, you would normally um, segment your spectrum into frequencies, and then you would have, say, frequency A, B, and C, and then you can have A, B, and C again. You can reuse them. All right. We'll also be looking at channel assignment, and then we'll be looking at handoff, where you see when you are traveling in a car or when you are moving from one town to the other. Normally, those days when we used to use those yam phones, you see if you are moving from KNUST to Angloga, if you are connecting to a different cell site, the cell site name, you will see the name on the reception, on the signal bar. That is what we call handoff. The cell site you used to be in has handed off to a new cell site, okay? And then we'll also be looking at interference and system capacity. We'll be looking at some of the causes of interference. We'll also be looking at how to increase system capacity, things we can do or things we need to do to ensure that our system capacity is improved. And then your lecture 6 is going to look at trunking and Erlang. Here, basically, it's all about capacity. So we'll be looking at things we need to do. We'll be doing calculation of channel capacity for our networks to determine how much traffic can go through that network. At what point would a call be dropped? How many calls will be dropped within a second and all that? We'll do all those calculations and analysis so that you understand how that is done. Yes. And then lecture 7 is going to look at GSM 7 and 8. We'll be looking at GSM systems, services, features, and architecture. We'll look at the GSM structure. We'll also look at direct sequence spectrum, frequency hopping, and all that. And then we'll have a case study, which I would give you to do. I haven't decided yet, but it's likely it's going to be on the IEEE wireless LAN and Bluetooth standards. So you're going to do a case study on introduction to orthogonal frequency modulation systems. And then you look at the 802.11a wireless technologies. That will be one of your assignments. Now, before I continue, you see I have categorized the lectures into, or the chapters into lectures. At the end of every lecture, we'll be having a tutorial, and that tutorial is going to come off as an assignment. You would first of all solve it, send it onto your V-class platform, I would mark it, and then would have a tutorial where I solve it myself for you guys to see, so that wherever you had doubts or wherever you had challenges, you couldn't solve them, you can also be able to solve them. Then in lecture 9 and 10, we'll be looking at networking fundamentals. We'll look at types of networks. We'll look at network topologies. And then we'll also look at the OSI model. So the OSI model normally defines the application layer to the physical layer, okay? So the application layer, we'll look at what happens there. We'll look at what happens at transport. We'll look at what happens at transmission and all that. So at every point, we'll look at what happens there, what equipments and devices are used there. And then we'll try, since you are not able to do your labs now, we'll try and see if we can have a virtual practicals. So one thing I would want you guys to take note of or look for and buy is a network crimping tool. I'll send you an image of that for you to see how it looks like. So a network crimping tool, you would have to get one of those. And then when you're buying them, try and buy some RJ45s as well. And also get some network cable. We'll look at the types of cables later as I teach you, and then you know what kind of cable you can get just for practical purposes. Yes. And then the last lectures, which will be 11 to 14, we would be looking at satellite communication. We'll look at satellite orbits. We'll look at link design. We'll also look at space and earth segment. And then we'll look at satellite access and some services for satellite communication. Okay. All right. So in the meantime, I don't know if any of you here has a question. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask before I continue. Okay, so I want to take it that your silence means you don't have any question for now. So let me move on. So the next thing is, I structured this course before we started the semester. And what I was envisioning was that we were going to have 2 meetings per week. And then those 2 meetings, which is 4 hours, we're going to use them for lectures. And then I was also going to ask you guys to give me another 1 hour within that week for tutorials, which meant that I was going to be doing 5 hours per week with you. But we'll see how this goes, since we have to move online and then we have been given only 3 hours to work with. And then you are supposed to have practicals, which is your lab work, and that is supposed to be 2 hours per week. However, Sir B will handle that one. I don't know how he's going to handle it yet, but we'll see how that goes. And then when we move on to assessment, you'd realize that your exams or your final exams is 60 marks. Like I said, I'm going to give you a case study, and I'll give you a project as well. At the end of the day, the project and the case study is going to be graded as 15 marks. And then your assignment and quizzes, the assignments, like I mentioned, the tutorials I'm going to be giving to you, is also going to be 10 marks. And then your mid-semester exams, which I would allow you guys to write at the end of the entire course when I have finished teaching would also be 15 marks. And then your lab report and exams, that one is also 100 marks. That is standing on its own. So you'd realize that the telecom course is basically a practical and then a theoretical course. Okay. All right. So now I have some outcomes here that you should note at the end of the course or at the end of the entire course. What are some of the learning outcomes? It is expected that when I finish teaching you or when we finish this course, you should, as a student, be able to understand or demonstrate some understanding of fundamental networking. You should be able to also demonstrate same for mobile and satellite communication principles. Okay. And then you're also supposed to demonstrate understanding of fundamental principles required to design computer networks. So I'm going to teach you in the basic or fundamentals to computer networks. You'll be studying topologies in networking. You'll be studying how to set up a network. That is why I asked, would be buying some tools. As we move on, when we get there, I'll let you know what tools you need. At the end of the day, when you buy them, they become yours and you can use it forever. We'll do the same thing. So you would have to demonstrate an understanding of satellite communication systems. The same thing we'll do for mobile communications. So the project I'm going to give you is going to test your awareness and understanding of mobile communication systems. So you're going to be given some parameters, and then you'd be asked to design a communication network around those parameters. And then also, you should be able to select appropriate methods for communication system design, as in the tools you would need, the kind of channels you would need to design a communication network, some principles you have to take into consideration. It is expected that at the end of this program or at the end of this course, you should be able to have a good understanding of that. Okay. All right. So, as we move forward, like I said earlier, your project, ignore the heading you find there, project H64MOC. I used it to teach some time back, and the course heading was that, and I forgot to change it, so don't worry about that. So the project will involve putting your core skills into practice in defining a mobile communication system. And it will be expected of you to provide a 15 to 20 page report comprising a literature review, the project scope and deliverables. And then you would need some discussions of the equipment requirements, commercial and regulatory aspects. So when I talk about equipment requirements, you're going to be talking about antennas, why you chose antenna with a gain of so and so, why you chose this specification for an antenna, why you have to take your transmit power to be this. You would also explain to me why you chose certain frequencies. And then also you would have to tell us some of the regulatory aspects or the regulations in having some communication systems in place in Ghana, which means you would have to resort to NCA and then get some information, and you would have to find a way to summarize all these into your 15 to 20 page report. You would need to use some tools for your analysis. You are at liberty to use whatever tool you want. You can use Excel, especially for the system design, the link budget design. You can use Excel. You can also use MATLAB. Okay, so that is it with the project. I don't know if you have any questions with the project. If you do have any question, just raise your hand. I'll mute you so that you can ask your question. Okay. So let's move on then, since there is no question. Now, when you look at this list I have provided for you here, this is a list of reading materials that I expect that you should find and read. I have some of them I will be uploading onto your V class for you guys to be able to access. I may not be able to upload every book here on the list, but it is expected of you as students to find a way to get access to some of these books and then use them as your reference materials as I teach you and you also learn, because very often the time we have is limited. I may not be able to touch on certain things, even though I want to and I'll try to. But a lot also depends on you. You would have to read. And like I always say, I don't examine students based on the materials I give them only. I expect you to read outside the box and then also be able to technically explain a principle when you are asked, not necessarily giving me word for word from any material or document I have given to you. Okay. So, without so much ado, that is the end of this introductory class. And so, if we don't have any much question, I will at this point take questions from you and then we can continue. So, Kunto, tell me, what is your doubt?
Is it
I'm listening. Go ahead.
concerning concerning
Kunto, your network
concerning
is very bad. We can
the
hardly hear you.
project? Uh, uh, we're trying to know say, those uh, 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 concerning the project, those softwares you mentioned, can you be accessed through our phones or? Sir, can you hear me? Hello,
I can
sir.
hear you now.
Hello,
You want to know?
hello, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So you want to know whether the software that you'd be
Sir,
using for your project, I can hear you.
sir.
It looks like Kunto
Okay, sir.
has.
I wanted to know whether can be accessed like through our phones or can be used. The network is bad here. Sir, can you hear me now?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
And then I wanted to know whether the softwares for the project can be accessed through our phones, since some the availability of laptops will be a little bit difficult for some of us, and I think so. So if those
Um,
softwares can be accessed through our
it's
phones, I just want to.
basically the softwares I would recommend you use is Excel, as in Microsoft Excel and MATLAB.
Mm.
Yes, but it's always better for you to use a laptop. So if you don't have a laptop, one thing you'd probably need to do is that you have to find a way to either borrow somebody's laptop and use or get your own laptop. Okay? this is just for a period. It's not going to be throughout the semester. So you just try and find a way to get a laptop that can help you, and then you use it and return it back to the person when you're done. Okay? And since some of you are going to, since some of you all live in Kumasi, you can contact some of your colleagues and you can do a group work. Just that you have to make sure that your report writing, you don't copy each other. You need to present what you did. Okay?
Okay, sir. If that's possible, then it is Corona.
It's
Everybody is afraid
possible.
to give his house. So what?
It's possible, but you just need to adhere to the protocols, okay? The safety protocols and precautions.
Yeah. Because Kumasi is big. It's far. We are living far, 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 far. Someone that's so far. Someone that is.
I know, I know. It is well. Okay?
Distance is quite far, but you try to know what you can do. So
It is
the
well.
probably you can dash me a laptop. You dash me a laptop so that
Why? You don't have a laptop?
God bless you.
Okay, during that time when you need to do the project,
No, say
during that time when you need to do
no, say
the project, you can come here and do it here. I'll give you a machine to use here.
okay. Okay, sir.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so if there is no other question, then I would bring today's session to an end. And then,
So,
yes,
yeah, sir. My concern is the project we will do. I would like to know: are we going to build something physical with
no,
our hands, or going to be a prototype, something on the machine?
it's not something physical. You're just going to apply the principles that I would teach you to design a network
Okay.
theoretically. Even though it's going to be theoretical design, it is expected that you are building a system. And you see, as an engineer, you don't just stand up and go and sit on the field to build or to implement something. You would have to simulate your ideas, you would have to simulate your design and make sure it is working and perfect and solve all the challenges you would find before you bring it to reality. So that is what we are going to be doing.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. Any other question? Okay, so guys, if there is no other question, then I would like to bring today's introductory lecture to an end.